earlier during the week, Representative Ilhan Omar, you know, left progressive member of what the media calls the squad, right? She got in a bit of a tussle online with the Democrats, with her own caucus, after she criticized uh, basically U.S. foreign policy. And let's get into the details. Representative Ilhan Omar clarifies tweet grouping U.S. Israel with Hamas Taliban after criticism from Jewish Democratic lawmakers. So very clearly, the Washington Post here is taking the framing of centrist Democrats, which can't really face up to American empire and the brutality of American foreign policy. I'm just going to skip ahead to where we actually see what the tweet. You know what? Let's go to the tweet. I hope she hasn't deleted it. So she this is questioning she did of Secretary of State Tony Blinken. And she said, "We must have the same level of accountability and justice for all victims of crimes against humanity. We have seen unthinkable atrocities committed by the U.S., Hamas, Israel, Afghanistan, and the Taliban. I asked Secretary Blinken where people are supposed to go, for justice." Let's hear her.
I know you opposed the court's investigation in both Palestine and in Afghanistan. I haven't seen any evidence in either cases that domestic courts both can and will prosecute alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity. And I would emphasize that in Israel and Palestine, this includes crimes committed by both the Israeli security forces and Hamas. In Afghanistan, it includes crimes committed by the Afghan national government and the Taliban.
So Yoda's saying that the volume's pretty low. Sorry about that, y'all. But so, Ilhan Omar, progressive left member of the Democratic Party, is recognizing and acknowledging the United States' brutal foreign policy that, frankly, I mean, this is a big part of being a leftist rather than a liberal, is you recognize and you know your history and you're following what's going on around the world, and you recognize that the American empire defends its hegemony on the world stage with like absolute viciousness and brutality. And if you dare voice anything about that, well, you're going to be completely, reviled, pushed out, canceled, dare I say. When was the last time anybody saw Noam Chomsky on cable television, cable news, on mainstream, right, cable news media? It was just to trot him out to say, listen, we should all vote for Joe Biden because Trump is really, really bad, right? But they're not bringing him on now to also add, this foreign policy of Biden is exactly the same as Trump, right? No, they're not going to do that because he criticizes American empire, and they don't want to hear that, right? So we had a whole caucus of, the Jewish members of the House and some senators saying that it was offensive and demanded that she clarify her words. Omar said her comments were misconstrued and that she was not suggesting a moral equivalency. She and other Democratic women of color in the House accused their colleagues of advancing Islamophobia and, in one case, anti-blackness in their public chastising of the lawmaker. I believe that was Cori Bush. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and her Democratic leadership team addressed Omar's comments in a joint statement, saying that equating the United States and Israel and terrorist groups such as Hamas and the Taliban foments prejudice. They said they welcomed Omar's clarification. This is really just giving. This is a big gift to the right and to the Republican Party. They're already the right is trying to paint Ilhan Omar as the Marjorie Taylor Greene of the Democratic Party. But to be clear, Ilhan Omar isn't talking about space lasers or, vaccine passports, none of which actually exist. She's talking about things that really, brutality that our country really does engage in. And again, she walked back her comments Let's see. She said here later, Omar did offer a clarification, saying she was not making a moral comparison between Hamas and the Taliban and the U.S. and Israel. "Quote: I was in no way equating terrorist organizations with democratic countries with well-established judicial systems," she said in a statement. But there's still the point is, who holds the United States accountable when they back a right wing, terror groups? That's what I will call, some of the groups that the United States government has supported in South America and Indonesia. And we always neglect to remember that the United States funded the Taliban. Israel and the United States funded, Hamas, right, to weaken another group in Gaza. That is all very conveniently forgotten. Guys, like the United States, our CIA installed Saddam Hussein because they knew he was a bloodthirsty murderer who would kill communists, and that was just, hey, that's our guy, that's our boy. So if you don't recognize that this is a continuing thing, a continuing pattern in United States foreign policy, that we that we have. We got to do something about this person we installed, and we have to invade this country to fight the terrorists that we used to fund and arm, right, and all that kind of stuff. This is just, Gore Vidal called us a culture of amnesia, right? And so people just, they'll just buy into whatever the talking point is, because we have a media that manufactures consent, and a mainstream media, I would say, that manufactures consent for whatever new war, whatever new invasion, whatever new military strike or funding, given arms to Saudi Arabia, the blockade on Yemen. I mean, it just goes on and on. It is tiring, and that's part of the issue. Is it's exhausting to document, remember, catalog in your head all the atrocities that the United States is responsible for. It's exhausting, and they, so many Americans are exhausted on the regular just trying to support themselves in this neoliberal dystopia we live in. So to also have all that knowledge in your back pocket about how our country is guilty, of so many crimes, they count on the fact that the majority of us have no idea, or aren't gonna be aware of all that stuff. But I do think, it's really important that we have folks like Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib and Cori Bush and members of the squad who are willing to talk out about this stuff. Progressive Democrats, leftists in the Congress, because unlike Noam Chomsky, right? They can't they can't just be ignored. They're in the government. They're representatives. But anytime the Democrats turn on this Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, they're playing a dangerous fucking game. And you think they would have they would understand that a little better after January 6th, after right-wing goons tramp through the offices, literally looking to string them up. As we can see here, Rashida Tlaib is standing in solidarity with Ilhan Omar. Islamophobia is alive and more violent, yet the outcry and work needed to combat it are lackluster. Hate knows no boundaries, whether it's Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, homophobia, racism, or sexism. You can't choose which hate to ignore. Ilhan Omar shared this clip. I'm going to try to mute the slur because this guy drops the N-bomb. This is a voicemail to her office. She says, trigger warning. Every time I speak out on human rights, I am inundated with death threats. Here is one we just got. Muslims are terrorists, and she is a raghead N-word, and every anti-American communist piece of shit that works for her. I hope you get what's fucking coming for you. So let's hear this.
They destroy cultural heritage. They destroy history, just like Miss Ilhan Omar, because Muslims are terrorists, and she is a raghead, and every anti-American communist piece of shit that works for her, I hope you fucking get what's coming for you.
Not get what's coming to you, get what's coming for you. And yes, I did, block out the N-word. I didn't really much want to hear that on my channel. I hope you understand, but that's what was said. Not hiding away from the reality of it. Just don't need to hear that, right? So we all heard what that guy was saying. So this is why you need to stand. We all should stand in solidarity with Ilhan Omar. I'm a guy who I came to leftism from, always was, leaned left and liberal. But, I was also into new atheism in the new atheism world. And I just, Christopher Hitchens and Sam Harris. And after hearing and listening to a lot of Islamophobic arguments from those guys, like I did some work to really unlearn a lot of bullshit that I had carried around about Islam and about Islamic people. I still think theocracy is bad, and I don't support it. And I think there are good faith criticisms of theocratic governments that we should, as leftists who are interested in human rights and solidarity with everybody, we should be supportive and critical of that kind of thing, of theocracy. But at the same time, I recognize that I have way more in common with Ilhan Omar, a Muslim representative who, though she's religious, she also believes in freedom of religion, right? And First Amendment principle to practice her religion freely. But she's also a very, strong ally in the growing of the left and showing us what it means to really be fucking brave in situations like this, where people literally calling for her death, and she's still speaking the truth about our system and about the American empire. And you see what it does to, people in power. It really upsets them. How dare you? How dare you? And there was one pretty funny example of, like American exceptionalism butting up against, the historical reality, the historical facts in in a discussion on Rising that a lot of people have been sharing. Rising is the Hill, if you don't know, is funded by Republicans. And so it very much has Republican interest, but they have the show Rising, which Crystal Barr and Sagar and Jetty recently exited from. And now it has Ryan Grimm and Emily Jashinsky. Ryan Grimm, of course, the great investigative left journalist, and Emily Jashinsky, apparently from the Federalist. Let's see. So there's an ad running, so I'm going to let the ad run while that happens. But I do got it. This is the full video. So this came up in, in regards to a discussion about Ilhan Omar and all this going on. But
the facts that the balance of good and bad worldwide over the course is the level of good. I think that the Taliban and it's imperialism.
Because the did I say Crystal Bar? I think I said Crystal Ball. A weird name, but yes, I think I said it right. I hope I did. But this was a discussion of, is it legitimate for Ilhan Omar to equate the United States with the Taliban and Hamas? Well, first of all, the death count of the United States is, clearly far surpasses anything that either group could attempt. So let's see here.
I agree in this case because I think the Taliban and Hamas are forces for evil, and where you say the United States has also been a force of evil, that there are victims of United States imperialism, I think what that does is wash over people that the United States has saved through its actions.
So just talking about United States imperialism somehow harms the idea of we saved people. Don't really understand how that is.
There is two sides to that, right? There are, I can admit, absolutely, of course, there are victims.
Well, we had to kill all these people to save all the other people who exist somewhere in my head.
But try to say the same thing and say, well, Hamas builds hospitals and schools, and the
Taliban
the Taliban eradicated a lot of corruption around Afghanistan, and the Soviet Union.
That's all they can do is just stop. What? I haven't heard of this. Yeah, because you don't know anything about it. I mean, but let's skip ahead to the clip that everyone was sharing.
But on the other side, on the balance,
Or just in Indonesia, or just in Vietnam, just in Hamas and Israel are pikers. The amount of pain and suffering that the U.S. has produced around the world, the Taliban, Hamas, and Israel are pikers compared to what the U.S. has been able to.
So all they can do is this kind of nervous laughter because he's right.
I was just in, say, Argentina, or just in Indonesia, or just in Vietnam, or just in...
He mentioned Indonesia, guys. Like, you're probably all here for my review of the Jakarta method, where the CIA-backed right-wing killing squads murdered hundreds of thousands of leftists. Some estimates have it at 1 million people were murdered in cold blood in Indonesia. And our CIA, it was one of their finest hours. You know, this is at the same time as... we're escalating tensions in Vietnam, which would end up killing millions of people. Innocent Vietnamese, innocent people in Cambodia and Laos. Millions of tons, or thousands and thousands of tons of napalm dropped over civilian populations
in Congo, or just you could throw a dart anywhere at the global map, and you can probably find at some point throughout the 20th century, the U.S. intervening to undermine, some type of social democratic effort and backing the most vicious right-wing elements. And the irony of them calling this anti-Semitism when the U.S. very consciously and explicitly out of World War II allied itself with former Nazis, helped Nazis escape justice, was complicit in what was called the rat line, with getting Nazis out of Germany and into these death squads that were run by the United States and deployed in an anti-communist fashion against the Soviet Union and against leftist elements in South America.
Now, this is incredible because a lot of people know about Operation Paperclip. Everybody knows about Wernher von Braun helping us get to the moon, helping with rocket technology. But those were not the only... It wasn't just Nazi scientists that the United States took on board. Those were not the only fascists. It wasn't just, they were just scientist fascists. The United States found good use for many a Nazi, as Ryan Grimm points out here.
But who ended the Holocaust? I mean, what country?
The Soviet Union, actually.
Okay, but...
See, and again, this is what generations of propaganda get you, is this idea that the United States single-handedly ended World War II, right?
I mean, the Soviet Union did that.
No,
we walked in after the Russians had suffered 20+ million casualties and marched into Germany.
She really is tripping over herself at this point.
Sure, but without the United States'
Sure, but without
intervention, a heck of a lot more people would have died in that atrocity.
Yes, and I'm glad the Soviet Union and the United States allied to beat Nazi Germany. But the Nazi Germany, the Nazis themselves then allied with the United States to go after the Soviet Union and to go after communist and social democratic elements in South America. That's an actual part of the history.
Right, but again, there's lives being saved in that process, a lot of lives being saved in that process, and a lot...
I don't see whose lives were saved by right-wing terror squads sweeping through the countrysides of Guatemala, Ecuador, Argentina, Chile, Brazil. I mean, guys, have you ever heard of Operation Condor? They were literally, had killing squads that went from country to country. You would have leftists flee Chile to deep into the Amazon just to get away from these killers, and Operation Condor would find them wherever they were. They would leave their own countries. I mean, it was a united effort by Argentina, right-wing dictators in Argentina and Chile. It was headed by Pinochet in Chile and Brazil. This is well documented, and the idea that this saved lives, disallowing our CIA, our State Department, not allowing South and Central American countries autonomy and social democracy saved lives. You know, Jacobo Arbenz, I believe he's the Argentinian president. I could be mixing him up, but I'm pretty sure he's the Argentinian president. He tried the most the most like simple land reform. He wanted to give land to indigenous people, still let rich people keep most of their land. Let's see. He was Guatemalan. This was in Guatemala. Jacobo Arbenz was the Guatemalan president. His land reform was very it was not socialism even. It was not communism. It was just giving some land to indigenous people to make the country more competitive as a capitalist country so that people would be able to export agriculture, you know, and have their own something that they could work off of. And that was deemed too crazy because it went against corporate United States interests. And, you know, so that's why, you know, I don't know. I don't get her calculus that it saved lives to murder innocent indigenous people across the countrysides of Guatemala or Ecuador, like all these countries I mentioned.
A lot of Americans putting their lives on the line and dying to save those lives.
Sure, but many fewer than Soviet lives died to take on the Nazis.
But that doesn't change the fact that the United States intervened and risked lots and lots of lives compared to what it may have been complicit in or what it may have been, lives it may have costed on the other side of that. I think, again, the balance there is clearly on the side of good in a way that you can't apply to the Taliban or Hamas. I would much rather have I would take the establishment government of the United States over the governing forces and the establishment of the Taliban any day. I'm glad we're in the American empire, not the Taliban.
Wait for it.
Taliban empire.
Wait till you hear who funded the Taliban at the very beginning.
Well, there is that. That's not a bad point, Ryan.
Oh, so funny, so funny. This is why history is so important, guys. This is why history is so important. You know, and this is why I'm going to study it because, you know, like I mentioned the Gore Vidal quote earlier, or, you know, his idea, the culture of amnesia, and you know, that was this is why Americans can so easily that's why we easily got roped into Iraq, even though it had nothing to do with 9/11, right? You know, because it was just like, you just got to throw up a couple little yellow cake uranium, and Dick Cheney comes out and says some scary sounding names, and okay, I guess we're going to Iraq now, right? After we're already in Afghanistan, you know. So good on Ryan Grimm for that. That was really interesting. Let's see. Trev Flat 5 says, not to mention the killing squads for private U.S. profit. See Banana Land documentary on YouTube. Thank you. Sun Green says, Truman Doctrine was an American foreign policy with the primary goal of containing Soviet geopolitical expansion during the Cold War. Absolutely. And I mean, that's what was the justification. And guys, you know, hate to break it to you, JFK supported this stuff. LBJ took us into escalated Vietnam. This, you know, it's a through line. Republicans and Democrats, every single one has supported this kind of stuff, including very recently, like absolutely very recently. You know, Trump was trying to tip. His Justice Department was trying to fuck with what was going on in Bolivia's election. We all know what Hillary Clinton did in Honduras and supporting those death squads. And, of course, the Obama Justice Department helped with the Lava Jato, you know, smear job against Lula da Silva, which falsely imprisoned a left-wing, one of the greatest and most popular left-wing leaders in recent modern history, you know, post-2000, Lula da Silva, and falsely imprisoned him for that.